Welcome to ElevatePod, where we elevate your mindset, we inspire your spirit, and ignite your leadership journey. This podcast is brought to you by Elevate Leadership Services. My name is Pearl.
And I'm Chiwechungu.
We are the co-founders of Elevate Leadership Services and the hosts of ElevatePod. The ElevatePod is dedicated to inspiring and empowering listeners, focusing on minorities and immigrants. We offer valuable tools, resources, and pathways to foster personal and professional development.
Thank you, Pearl. Today, we are so delighted to interview Dr. Akwi Asombang, who will share her journey, her experiences, and her thoughts on the power of service. Welcome again, Dr. Akwi Asombang, to our podcast, where we are going to explore the heart, the hustle, and the humanity behind what you do in the world of medicine. Today, we delve into the power of service with the extraordinary guests, an interventional gastroenterologist whose dedication transforms lives every day, whether it's relieving pain or providing hope. Her work embodies the true spirit of service. They say medicine is not just a profession, but a calling, a commitment to save others, other human beings, in their most vulnerable moments. Today, we celebrate those who wear this calling with grace and compassion. As Maya Angelou says, they may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Before we bring Dr. Akwi Asombang in, let me give you her bio, rich bio of what she does and how she is going to explain further herself. Dr. Akwi Asombang is an interventional gastroenterologist at Massachusetts General Hospital, MGH, Harvard Medical School. She is the director of Global Health Program in Gastroenterologist at MGH. She completed her advanced endoscopy fellowship at Beth Israel Deaconess Medicine Center, Harvard Medical School in Boston, Massachusetts. She completed fellowship at Washington University School of Medicine, St. Louis, Missouri, and the Fogarty International Clinical Research Fellowship. Prior to her fellowship, she completed a combined internal medicine pediatrics residency at St. Louis University School of Medicine, St. Louis, Missouri, and an MPH at St. Louis University School of Public Health. She is a graduate of Kasturba Medical School in Manipur in India. Her professional interests are endoscopy, in brackets ERCP, EUS, and then she's going to explain about all those things. I'm not going to go because I don't know what they mean. Gastrointestinal cancer, medical education, and global health. We need more of this. She travels around the world. Her upbringing and interaction with various populations led her to form the Pan-African Organization for Health, Education, and Research, known as PAHO, to tackle the problems faced by most of the African communities. PAHO is a non-governmental organization which is focused on the soundness of the health sector as the cornerstone of social and economic development for all African countries. What a blessing. She's also the founder of the African Association of Future Gastroenterologists, known as AFFG in abbreviation, which aims to provide a platform for mentorship, networking, and collaboration for medical students and doctors interested in gastroenterology and hepatology in Africa. Beside all this, she is a wife and a mother to somebody that I know who is very adorable, David. Akwi, you have anything to add to this magnificent bio of yours?
No, actually, I don't. Just thank you so much. I'm very, very excited about the conversation we're going to have today. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so
Thank you
much
so much. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. And we will go right in a couple moments. So today we're shining a spotlight on those whose hearts beat in harmony with their calling, whose work transcends procedures, diagnosis, to touch the very essence of human dignity. Today we celebrate this extraordinary dedication, the passion that fuels the tireless hours, the patience to listen deeply, and the humanity to always remember why we entered this noble calling in the first place. So join us as we explore the story of humanity, the humanity that drives the true spirit of service. So we'll dive right into our very first question, Dr. Akwi. As a physician, you serve patients daily, but service can go beyond medicine. How would you define service in your own words, and how do you incorporate it into your daily practice?
Sure. I think that's a really, really good question. And I'm going to take it from uh, uh, sort of what I would consider unique goal, which is, you serve, you care for patients with the goal that they do better. But at the same time, you're thinking about your future or the future of your community, meaning um, the other form of service I think of is mentorship. I consider mentorship as a form of service, being able to pass the skills that I have on to the next generation. So we've created a foundation, right? And so I will continue to care for people, but when I'm gone, who will carry that on? So I think another aspect is something that I enjoy is being able to mentor, being able to share my skills, being able to see the good in our medical students and our healthcare professionals. Because there's something good in everyone. I say with opportunity, people thrive. And so one of the things I love to do is I absolutely love mentoring medical students across the African continent because I think of how I got to where I am today. I got here because there was someone out there who believed in me. And I think of my mentor, Dr. Mary Margaret Wilson, who, and this may not directly answer the question, but I'm just going to provide sort of the basis as to why I think mentorship is a form of service. So I was in the hospital, never spoken to her in the hospital, but we were working in the same hospital. And then I was there for, I'm not sure how long before I finally met her. We actually walked into each other, walking down the same hallway. This was over 20 years ago in the medical school, in the basement of the medical school by the library. And I remember she stopped me and she just said a few words. If you ever need me, let me know. Like,
Wow.
never met her, but that's what she said. And I was so excited. And the reason I was excited was, like you mentioned, so I'd gone to school in India
Mm-hmm.
and the culture is slightly different in terms of it's, you don't speak to your seniors, you don't, it's just like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. And so I was so excited. I told my parents, I'm like, oh my God, this doctor spoke to me, etc. And so when it was time for me to start applying for residency, she kept her word, meaning like I needed her guidance. She knew I was applying and she was there for me. When she saw that there was a spot open at St. Louis University, contacted me, told me there's a spot. I dropped everything I was doing, ran over to do the interview. And that was just simply from a meeting in the basement, but we had been in the same company, meaning like I'd seen how she works, I'd seen how she interacts with patients, and she was just a role model. And because she believed in me without really, really knowing me, but just for a few weeks, a few months, it made me feel even stronger about my already, underlying belief in others. And so from there, I think I've done everything I possibly can that when I see an opportunity, I would want to give others a chance so that they can thrive. So I think that's a form of service. I think, being a role model, being an educator, being a mentor, I think those are different forms of service that I think we can pass on or we can live by or that bring joy to us. So that's, I would say, probably a form of service, that I sort of live by.
Oh, wonderful. You know what? I think that mentor of yours showed you the how we pay forward.
Yes,
And I think, and you actually emulate that because you're also
yes,
paying forward.
yes,
And we need more of that. Yeah, it's a
yes,
service, and I think we, especially for the immigrants and the people that you are serving, I think that's so powerful.
yeah.
But yes, you talk about service, and I love that. I love to hear
Hmm.
what you have said. But there's something that always inspires us from the beginning to really make it
Hmm.
because you went in medicine,
Hmm.
but and then you took a specialty,
Hmm.
your career in interventional gastroenterology. What actually inspired you
Hmm.
to major in that? And over the years, how has this inspiration really evolved with you or for you?
Hmm. So I would, if I look back, my inspiration would be my parents. So I grew up very comfortably. I grew up in Zambia. I have zero complaints. My father worked for the United Nations. My mother was a housewife. And I always say, I think being a housewife, honestly, is the toughest job because
Yes.
as a housewife, you need to have the mental well-being. You just need to be everyone's person.
Right.
You're not getting a paycheck. You're not, but you have to be strong for everyone. You have to be there. She's the one who's like taking us. We went to boarding schools, my siblings and I. So she's the one like flying us to boarding schools, make sure we're tucked in. When we're in school, if we're, having issues, she's the one we need to call, but she cannot break down because everyone is relying on her.
Correct.
But I grew up in a household where some of the things my parents would say is like the things you see now,
Mhm.
these are our things, but you have to
Wonderful.
work, you have to work to reach this point. So even though I was comfortable, I wasn't spoiled in my comfort. But some of the key things that, really helped me was that they showed me the diversity of humans. Meaning, like, we may be different as humans. Some people need something, others may not need something because they have most of what they need. But if you're in a position to give, you should give. You may not agree with someone, but you can respect them. And so, growing up with some of those beliefs, with some of that foundation, I think just knowing that I had
Mhm.
and I'm able to give back. So, why shouldn't I give back?
Mhm.
So that was sort of the foundation of the inspiration to want to give back. And then when it came to selecting medicine, of course there were like a lot of other things like you're thinking about, but the reason for thinking about those things was not sufficient. It's like, oh, I want to be a lawyer because I can dress in suits. Like, that's not a good enough reason. But it was like, where would I be able to serve the most? Where would I be able to contribute the most? And automatically, or I shouldn't say automatically, because it was a lot of going through this, that, and the other, medicine seemed to be the best fit for me. That's what I was most comfortable with. That's where I knew I could give back. And I think part of that too was, when I think of my father, I think I mentioned like before we started, I have four sisters, three of us are doctors. And then I have an aunt who's also a medical doctor, supported and raised by my father. But he instilled that in us because he wasn't able to go to medical school. He didn't see it as a woman, man, boy, girl situation, but he thought his daughters need to get the best education they possibly can.
Mhm.
And he couldn't fulfill his dream to be a medical doctor. So I think that was also part of the driving force. I think parents have a role in what their children become.
Mm-hmm.
Children can obviously go in whatever direction, but they play a role. And I think he played a role in
Mhm.
sort of directing our path to
Right.
being what it is that we want to do. I can give other stories of, telling on my sister how she became a medical doctor, but I'll focus on me before I get in trouble with her.
I
You know,
want
but
her
I
to come and talk about that herself, right?
ask yes, ask her. But but it was so basically it's my parents who inspired me to be a medical doctor. And then when you mentioned the question about the the specialty I chose being in gastroenterology and eventually interventional, that was just being in school. I just loved the pancreas. So
Okay.
it's that simple. It's that simple. It's like, what organ in the body did you find most interesting? And that's basically how so the pancreas is what I think one of the most amazing organs that's
Oh
sort of
my
located in the
God.
middle of your body. But but that's what drove me
Mhm.
into that specialty of interventional GI. And then I enjoyed procedures. So then it's being able to take your knowledge and connecting it to the procedures, or connecting the procedures to your knowledge and seeing how all that works to
Mhm.
be able to help patients. But
Wonderful.
that's the interest. But it all starts with my foundation. I have a very, very good foundation with my parents being inspiring, just teaching you sort of, providing, I would say, like a strong foundation in life, but
Mhm.
also opening your eyes to the diversity of life. And the key thing I always say is we're all unique, we're all different. We may not agree, but you can respect each other. And then that sort of, led to all the different exposures in life. And also his
Wonderful.
experiences, like listening to, because he worked a lot in war-torn areas.
Mhm. Mhm.
And, I would say, like, for me, some of the best presents, I went to high school at Randolph-Macon Academy. It's a military academy. It
Mhm.
was either that or a convent. But anyway, so some of the best memories is for my birthday, being able to receive a fax from him saying happy birthday was a big deal. You know what I mean? So it's like knowing that he was away working in war-torn areas, but he
Mhm.
still
Communicate.
remembered something so special.
Mhm.
But yeah, so my inspiration in terms of where everything started and what sort of shaped my life would definitely be my parents. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I see the heart of service, and
Hmm.
that is very profound. It comes out. It's and as you say, our parents, our
Hmm.
roots, because we are
Yeah.
rooted. And where
Hmm.
we are given opportunities, but our roots is where we
Hmm.
came from, and our parents actually. And I can see how your parents really paved that way, and I'm
Yeah.
so happy that they did because
Yeah.
we have somebody who is giving back
Yeah.
to the continent as well. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes, and you shared about mentorship. I think that's
Hmm.
something that we really need in our communities today.
Yeah.
Just someone that can hold your hand or at least show
Yes.
you the way. So that's something that is really, really inspirational. Just being able
Yes.
to remember others,
Right.
on our path.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that being said, you did share a little bit about how you were inspired or how someone else helped you.
Hmm.
Yes, just in the hallway, someone you had never known. So I can imagine that you have had many experiences and many opportunities to also mentor and also to help others. So, but can you share maybe just one memorable experience or one memorable act of service, big or small, that deeply impacted you, a patient, or another person?
Mm, yeah, that's such an interesting question. And I'll go back to the point about the mentor. So till this day, she's actually, someone I look up to, someone whom I would say would be my healthcare proxy. If I'm going down, that is someone who I know would be able to give input. So till this day, I could, for those who know me, sometimes I may not need to say her name and they'll know exactly who I'm talking about. I remember my parents were here for a couple of days and I'm just like, all right, there's just one person they really need to meet,
Yes.
and I highlight that because it's been over 2 decades. And
Mm,
so that's the importance of mentorship. I think it's very possible to lift people up, or even lift yourself up without putting someone down, and you guys
mm.
mentioned paid forward, that's like I celebrate all these things with her. And those are the things that she would also say it's like paid forward. So when you say to share, it's hard to share one experience from a non-medical side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clump it into
Oh,
one. I'll think of poor hair. So this nonprofit that I co-founded with my buddy, Dr. Sula Mazimba. So it's the Pan-African Organization for Health Education and Research. And we've been doing this for a few years, but basically we have medical students apply, and when the application process is actually going on right now as we're speaking. And the number of applicants has increased over the years. And sometimes it's so hard to pick individuals, but we have medical students who apply. And what they're applying for is for us to be able to provide them one-on-one mentorship. And we intentionally limit the number. We limit the number per year. It could be 5 to 10 individuals. And the reason we do that is, like, when you're mentoring someone, it's sometimes nice if you can provide the one-to-one. Sometimes it's a little bit more challenging to do groups of like hundreds, depending on what your mission is. But anyway, so with the Poher Scholars Program, we select medical students, and we select them from different parts of the African region. So we select from the north, the south, the east, west, and the central part. But we don't, when selecting, we might compare all the applicants from the south in one, and we select from there. And what we're going to do with them is then we provide that mentorship for an entire year. And the reason I cannot pick just one is because if you look over the years, we've had about 50. I've grown to enjoy and appreciate all of them because they have all done something. The way I look at it is, what did they come in with? And everyone leaves with something. And that something could even be just self-esteem, because sometimes we don't believe in what our abilities are. Some of them have published on, they've presented at international stages, but every single Poher scholar has done something that I would consider a positive impact. So it's hard for me to say pick one individual, but I can pick the group and say Poher scholars. That's how I would look at it. So the Poher Scholars Program has provided mentorship for medical students across the African continent. So that would be a powerful, what I consider a powerful impact. We have an annual medical research and mentorship symposium. We're actually having it in November of this year, and we host it in Zambia. And it's an opportunity for medical students, healthcare professionals, to come and present their research, to come and receive mentorship. They have to apply for it. But for example, this year, our two keynote speakers, Olive Strachan, who is an author and entrepreneur, she's from the Dominican. And then we also have Professor Obimbo, who's in Kenya. And so we're bringing in two amazing professors, or two amazing individuals, who the students will have an opportunity to have a face-to-face discussion, or those who are virtual will have an opportunity to speak to them. So the whole idea is, how can we provide the opportunity for our students to thrive? Because sometimes that's what someone needs. They just need that opportunity. They just need you to believe that they can. You may not see the full path. They may not see their full path, but you just have to believe that they can. And mentorship is it's a two-way traffic, as I say, meaning I don't tell them what I think they need to do. They need to tell me what they want to do, or they think they want to do, even if they don't believe it. And then I will help direct them and get them to that point. But it's a beautiful relationship. So that's why it's hard for me to pick, like, from a non-medical, quote unquote, perspective. So I would say the Poher Scholars is one. From a patient perspective, and this might, touch on some other questions that you might have. But I think when we're honest with patients is when we make impact. And I can definitely give, examples. So in my field, I see a lot of cancer. And there's some days that are just depressing. Depressing, because you're taking the sadness and the pain of the patient. You've seen so many patients that day. You've made the diagnosis of cancer. And one of my colleagues tells me, like, the way to think about it is you're helping them, right? You've helped them come up, you've helped them reach the diagnosis so now they can get treatment. Or you've helped them, like you pointed out, Chibwe, that, you've helped them by, if I did a procedure, put in a stent, relieved the obstruction, you've helped them relieve some of that pain, relieve their infection. That's how to look at it. But I think when we have honest conversations with our patients about dying, when we have honest conversations with our patients about their clinical status, about their situations, I can think of the times, so I've been in medicine over 20 years, and the times that I can remember crying in the past couple of decades is twice. The first time was I had taken, when I first started, I was an intern. So my first year out of med school, and I'd taken care of a patient. He was an older gentleman. He didn't speak. Like, he was like in his 80s, but he was there. But I developed a bond just with his presence, would take care of him. I think it's like, I don't know, he was between 80 and 90, it was like, I don't know, 85 or something. But, it's not that I cannot say like there's some knowledge that he was spilling out that I gained. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just caring for him in his presence for almost a month. And then when he passed, I remember I cried. There was a lot of sadness. But then, over the years, you have to somehow detach yourself. And it's not being insensitive or anything of that sort. But I think as medical doctors, it's very hard to be emotionally connected to. You cannot be emotionally connected to all your patients. I think the most recent, when I cried, and I'm glad I had a conversation in terms of, when you ask about impact. I was taking care of someone and I'd known them. Like, when we take care of patients, when we do some of the procedures, we're repeating the procedures like every few months. So we can watch the patients, so we see the changes they're going through. And I noted that there was a change. This wasn't like the regular, I was like, things are not looking good. So I asked the simple question. Well, it's not a simple question, but I asked the question, like, have you had that discussion, about what will you do? Meaning, what we're afraid of sometimes is we're afraid of death, right? But I think it's so important to have that conversation about death and dying. If you have a family member who's sick, it's so important to just prepare. It's so important because you might be in that position, because sometimes, and so I also took a master's in bioethics recently, and ethical concerns come up, meaning what does the patient want? If it's your relative and you never had that conversation, you don't know if they want to be on a breathing machine because you didn't talk about it. You don't know if they want chest compression, someone to be stomping on their chest. And I'm saying stomping because that's how people think about it. But, we're trying to resuscitate the patient. You don't know what they want. But when you talk about it, then you're in a better position to let them go in peace. You're in a better position to let them go how they would want to go. And you're in a better position to remove the burden on you. If you're someone's wife, someone's husband, sister, whatever, if you're the decision maker, when you had that conversation, it makes it so much easier. So I think for me, the tough conversations with patients is just being able to tell them the realities of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the things is we always try, meaning like we try everything we possibly can until we cannot.
You cannot. Yeah.
And when you cannot, you really just have to like sometimes maybe the patients might suspect it and they're just waiting for you to initiate that conversation. They're just waiting for you to say, you know what, this is it. Things don't look good. I think you guys should talk about it. Have you talked about where you would want this or where you'd want that? And that's a tough conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is, that's a very, very sad conversation. And if there's children involved, it's making sure that the children have support that they need as well. But I would say
Right.
the conversations about death, those are probably the tougher conversations, but we just have to.
But how do you find the courage as a physician? How do you find the courage and also stay grounded?
Yeah.
Because you're going through all these every day. I think how you go through different situations. So
Yeah.
how?
I think it's just, it's the reality,
Mhm,
right? So you cannot lie to your patient. I
mhm,
mean, I guess you could,
mhm.
but it's not helping the patient,
Correct.
right? You have to ask yourself, what can I do to help the patient,
Mhm,
right? What can I do? If you don't know, you don't know. But I think there are some patients we've developed, and the other thing is it's multidisciplinary, meaning there are multiple people taking care of that patient.
mhm,
Mm-hmm.
And so there are some situations where I know I'm not the only one, but there's other people. And I would send a message like, I saw so and so, and they're just not looking good.
mhm,
And I'll hear what the other person has to say. And then it's like, yeah, we noticed the same. We started having the conversation. So then that makes it easier for you to have that conversation. I'll give you a specific example. So as I mentioned earlier, like we diagnose a lot of cancer.
mhm,
And so, and sometimes when we make a diagnosis on patients, or when you get labs drawn, the doctor sends you a letter, et cetera. Like I don't usually, like for cancer diagnosis, I feel that's a conversation you need to have with the patient. Like when we perform the procedure, either the patients know that they're just coming to get that final diagnosis so they can get the treatment. But sometimes they may not know that that's what they're coming for. But I tell them honestly, like what I saw looks like a cancer, but I'm just waiting for the diagnosis. So then when I get the diagnosis and I have that conversation with them, you have, because you have to prepare them.
Correct.
Right? Meaning like you have to give them time, but I think it's adding, it's not a death sentence so that they know that there's hope. Like a diagnosis of cancer is not a death sentence.
No.
It's like giving them hope and saying, okay, these are the plans. But if we don't tell them the whole truth, if we don't use those words, how are they going to prepare?
Correct.
So they need, I don't know if it's over the years that this has come. I mean, I've been doing this long enough, but I think it's just knowing what is the best way forward for the patient. I think on a personal note, yeah, it's very hard. It's very painful, and we get a lot of and maybe it's because of our setting, because we're a large hospital. We get a lot of young patients. We get really young patients with cancer, and I think sometimes now the emphasis is like get screened. I just had, this might be going off track. Like I just went and like I've had my colonoscopy, and it was funny when I had it. So I had prepared, like, when people tell me stories about like my patients tell me stories, it's funny. Like I'm like, oh, you got to get your colonoscopy like before I had it done, and patients were like, I think I can say this. If I cannot, you guys could delete this. But they're like, my butthole exploded when preparing for it, But I knew what they meant when they were telling me. But I'm just like, huh. And so then when I took it, I think I was like prepared for like the worst. And I was like, that wasn't so bad, But then in my mind, it's like I'm getting a colonoscopy to help diagnose or detect early cancer. Right. And so then when I see patients who are young or they have a family history, it's encouraging them to do that. Or like I just got my mammogram and it's like, it's just 15 minutes of my day, So it's like I got my mammogram to help me diagnose early cancer, if there is, early breast cancer, whatever it is. So I think it's sort of like the young patients, it makes you sad when you make that diagnosis, but then you also want to take that opportunity now to ask if they have relatives. And so then you use that sad opportunity to then educate and see if you can reach a wider audience around their community, their people, and seeing how you can sort of, try to alleviate some of what could potentially be passed on. And hopefully that all makes sense. And I didn't sort of go off the deep end here.
Yeah.
No, actually you're just right on path. You want to go, Chivoy?
Yes, I think what I was saying, that I remember for me, because they say at 50 you're supposed to take your colonoscopy, and I waited until 52 because of the things that I heard from people.
Yes.
How horrible. And exactly what you say, when you go through it, then you realize, is this it?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And now the new guidelines is 45, but it's exactly that. It's like, oh, and my other confession is I don't like taking medicines. I don't like taking pills. I know, you too. I also don't like shots. I don't like shots, but you know what? When it's time for the flu shot, of course I am going to be in line to get my flu shot, because it's like the risks and the benefits of, the pain from the shot or the benefits of the flu shot. Anyway, but yes, absolutely. Yeah.
You talked about the emotional side of things, like how you try to detach, of course, in a good way. Now, if you could just speak more to that, like how do you balance the technical complexities of your procedures with the emotional needs of the patients?
Yeah.
How do you balance that with them still knowing that you have their best interests at heart?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question, and I'll try and answer it in a couple of ways. So usually and I can speak for me, when I'm performing a procedure, I'm not emotionally, there's no emotions at all when we're performing the procedure. Meaning, you're not in that moment. I think the emotion that comes out is the joy of, let's say you're doing a procedure, someone had a stone blocking it, and you're able to relieve it. It's the joy at the end of that. And then it's like you're performing a procedure and you're really hoping there's no mass, but then you find a mass and you diagnose a cancer, the sadness in that. But the actual act of going in, getting to whatever it is I need to get to, there's no emotional attachment, but it's the outcome that's emotionally draining. And, and it goes back to, like I said, what my colleague has said, it's you just have to tell yourself that what you're doing is for the best for the patient. But you cannot cry because you need to take care of you. For you to take care of a patient, you need to take care of you. So if with every single patient, that you make a diagnosis of a cancer, you're so emotionally attached, you're crying every time, you yourself would break down. You can connect with a patient for sure, so the emotional detachment is just me taking it on internally as my problem, but I can still connect with a patient on the level of you feel what they're saying, you hear what they're saying. It's like when sometimes when patients get angry at us, right? And I'll explain. A patient gets angry at us. A patient is yelling. You have to step back and saying the patient is not angry at you. The patient is angry at the system. You happen to be in front of them and they need to vent. And so they're venting to you. So I should not be bringing my emotions into an already emotionally charged conversation and start yelling at the patient and things of that sort. They're angry, they're yelling, let them yell, let them release, let them, they just have to release, but it's not you. So that's how you detach yourself emotionally. And you know that they're angry at the system. Because it's very challenging because you cannot walk in every time someone yells, it's like, oh, they're mad at me, they're mad at me, they're mad at me. They're not mad at you, they're mad at the system, they're mad at their diagnosis, they're mad at what's going on, but it's not necessarily you. So that's an example of where your emotions just take a back seat, but you understand what the patient is saying. So, but yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of the passion in you. Because the thing is, you're taking the people, the patient is in front of you. I see the service, the power, this topic about the power of service, and I see it really comes in every angle. The way you're answering you're serving the patient. It's the patient that I think needs to get better. It's the patient that I have to listen to. I think the world is better having you as a doctor. Yeah, it's really, really very good.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, but having said that as well, I know that you face a lot of challenges, a lot of pressure. But how do you continue to ground yourself with the pressures of life, with the pressures of wish you had just diagnosed this much, much earlier, or I wish you would have come much earlier? How do you reconcile with that on a
Yeah.
daily?
So I think one of the first things when you come with some of these challenges is communication.
Mhm.
I'll give an example. So there's something known as a therapeutic misconception. And so what that means, because I encountered this, I remember a patient who had a GI cancer and came in very upset because they were under the impression, because sometimes I get that question, they were under the impression that I was going to treat them as opposed to like I'm, making a diagnosis. Or I was going to take out a certain part of, certain organ, or, if it's like a pancreas, you're going to take this thing out. And so what that therapeutic misconception is, which sometimes is where I think some of our challenges are, is if a patient, when we mix up research, a simple way, when we mix up research and clinical care, right? Sometimes we enroll patients in studies. If a patient is in a research study, that's different than a patient getting clinical care, right? And so the patient may not necessarily understand that they're in a research study versus they're getting, clinical care. And so they might mix those two things up, right? So they're coming to me as part of their clinical care, and I'm going to make a diagnosis, or I'm going to stage them, or whatever the case is. And so then they would be upset because what they were told is different than what I'm going to do. So the first step in anything emotionally charged, or in any relationships, is the communication. So first, if you have a situation, talk about it. Being able, because sometimes I think we get upset, we get sad, we just get down, we feel burned because of lack of communication. We're making a lot of assumptions. You're assuming this, you're assuming that, you're assuming this about your colleague, or your colleague is assuming this about you. You're exchanging emails, and then things are just getting more emotionally charged. But if you communicate, that's the first step. And then with those patients, it goes back once again, it's just when you know that what you're doing is to help. And then also when you have an honest conversation with the patient, that really, really helps. When when you've made the diagnosis, you're feeling sad about it, the patient's feeling sad about it, but then you can talk about it. You can talk about it, and then you're accepting, quote unquote, the realities of life. The fact is we're all going to go. We just don't know how. Yeah. But when you are in those situations, as sad as it is, you just have to say, you know what? There are times when we review cases and you're just like, I don't know. But then as a group, we review and we discuss it, and we're just like, you know what? We'll give it one last shot, or we'll give it a shot. Like, even if or you're thinking like, I don't know if this is going to help, but you have to give it a shot. But you have a conversation with the patient so that their expectations are not high. You're saying, you know what, we could do this. It may or may not help you, but we don't know unless we try. And these are the risks. And then when you're both on that level of understanding, and you go in and you do the case, but you've given it the best you can, that's all you can do. Right. And just being able to have people to talk to. And sometimes there's some, people, and not everyone around you is someone to talk to.
Correct. And you know what? I think there are also patients where you can communicate, but they are still not accepting.
Oh, yes.
Right. So those are some challenges that you face. So how do you deal with that? This is just a follow-up to, I think, where you have communication, good communication, because you want to make sure that the patient is involved in their own journey. So how do you deal with those ones who are just, I don't want to hear this. I
respect their wishes. You have to respect the patient's wish. We have, and this is over a few decades of caring for patients. Sometimes, sometimes patients might be seeing multiple doctors, or they might be seeing non-doctors who are giving them advice. I always have the open, honest conversation saying, listen, I cannot see you with so-and-so because I don't know the medicine that they practice, or if it doesn't align with what I'm asking them to do. But patient care is a joint decision. If you're I do have patients who want to try something that I've never heard of, but they've read it on Facebook. Their neighbor told them that it worked for someone's third cousin's mother's sister's friend's neighbor. I respect them. If I've said these are the options, because when you speak to patients, an option to do nothing is sometimes an option.
Correct.
And so we don't force and we don't convince. Like, I'm not going to convince you to do something. I'm not going to force you. I'm going to provide you the options. I'm going to tell you what I think is the best option in this situation, but I'm not going to force you to get it. And so if someone tells me after we've had like multiple discussions and they're not doing anything, that I've asked them to do, it's like, I wanted these labs, they're not doing the labs, I need this, they're not doing it. I'm just like, there's no point of a relationship. There's no partnership here. But I respect them and I say, you know what, you do what you think is best, but this doesn't align with when I'm able to, because I not continue to care for you in the state, but you respect them. Now that's slightly different than, there's some patients who don't want to be intubated, don't want to be resuscitated. That's a little bit different, because there are some, situations where, someone's like, you know what, if I reach the stage where my heart stops, I stop breathing, don't do chest compressions, don't give me medications, don't put a breathing tube. You respect that. You're not going to come in and be like, but I think this patient needed to. It's like they did not want it. You had the conversation, they understood it. There are times, like for our procedures, that does come up. And so we have to have that clarity, meaning during the procedure, we're going to give you medications that would cause your breathing to slow down, or will cause your heart to stop for a bit or to slow down. That's different than if you're on the floor and it suddenly stops. Right. So when someone comes to you and they say, I'm DNI, I mean, do not intubate, do not resuscitate, you need to have that conversation and context. Right. And so it all also depends on context. But at the end of the day, it's you communicate with the patient and you respect the patient. It's one last example, not to get carried away. Another common thing we see in the hospital, and I'm not a Jehovah's Witness, I'm always learning. If you have, someone who's a Jehovah's Witness, and they tell you about not wanting blood products, then you're just like, well, you needed to have this. So you have that conversation with them. And if it's like, well, I can't do your procedure because of this. And then, and depending on what the conversation is, sometimes it might be like, okay, the number is good enough, but there's a risk you might bleed and you still don't want the procedure and you know that you could die. And they might say, yes, I'm okay with that. So that's based on conversation, as opposed to like Jehovah's Witness, they don't want any blood, so no, we're not going to do this procedure. Or if someone is Muslim, and so I may not understand everything about Ramadan, but I respect the patient. And so there's situations where most hospitals, at least that I've worked at in the States, they have a religious leader of whatever faith. And so, I'd ask the patient, well, should I have an imam come and just sort of provide some guidance? Because I really don't know. Like, I think you need to eat to help you feel better. And they might just need to speak to their religious leader who would say, you know what, in this situation, it's okay to eat. But if I had been like, well, they don't want to eat, that's it, and leave it at that, then I'm not necessarily helping the situation. So it goes back to communication and context, right? So we respect our patients, but we must understand before we're just like, okay, that's it, And so sometimes conversations might take a little bit longer, but you have to communicate. You have to understand where they're coming from. The last example is sometimes patients want to leave the hospital and would say like left against medical advice. But you need to ask them like, well, you don't need to, but sometimes you ask them why. And then you'll find out like someone has a court date, or like, they have like a pet at home, or they have like someone at home they're just trying to get to. Or it's like, my partner has cancer as well, and I just want to get home and be with that person. But if I didn't have that conversation to ask them, and I was like, that's it. As they say, then I've washed I've washed my hands, that's it. Then I would not have understood all of that. Right. Correct. But since I communicate, then I'll be like, oh, let me see what we can do as social services. I don't know. Can they provide food for, what can we do? Yeah. So it all goes back to being able to communicate, understanding context. Your emotions do play a role, but the emotions will be guided by that communication and the context.
The power of service.
Power of service, indeed. I hear a lot of compassion in there.
Oh, yes.
Lots of empathy.
Yes.
Because when we ask the right questions, have honest conversations, communicate clearly, we do not give way to assumption.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Time is running. This is a wonderful, Akwi, we can go on and on, but I think we have a few, maybe one or two more questions. Come on, I think before we end, because this is, to be honest, you are warming my heart. Because when I hear what you're saying, and anybody who is going to hear this conversation, as you are really a very dedicated doctor. We want to see people like you. I'll
Mhm.
send this also even to my child so that he can know as they start their milestone in this
Yes,
field, they realize that this is very important.
absolutely.
Service,
Absolutely.
service is your
Yeah,
calling. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe just one last one
Sure.
in the interest of time. Just what advice would you give young physicians who are aspiring
Mhm.
to serve with the heart and skill? How do they just balance all of that together? I know you've already said a lot in that area, but just in a few moments, just speak to someone who's aspiring to become a physician or are already a young physician. What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, the first is you have to believe in yourself because sometimes no one will believe in you but you, right? And if you look in the mirror, you're your best cheerleader. And it's easy to say that, like believe in yourself. It's very easy. We say that, but it's not easy to do
Mm,
because sometimes you will be surrounded by people who will bring you down. Like they woke up that morning and their job was just to bring you down. They had nothing else to do but to bring you down. You should feel powerful knowing that you're on someone's list as to be brought down. You're doing something right, you know? But that's the
right.
first thing. It's like you've got to believe in yourself. And then the other thing I usually tell my mentees is I say, do not self-reject. And what I mean by that is sometimes there's opportunities out there and we have a tendency of saying, well, they won't accept me. I won't get in. You like already rejected yourself even before you tried.
I know.
I would say, you have to go for it and let the people receiving be the ones to tell you no,
Yes,
Like
right?
that.
And the other thing is, when you hear that no, it just means no right now,
correct.
So because I remember like I had applied for grants.
Mhm.
And I remember applying for like a lot of grants this one time, and I got like, I don't know, half of them rejected. And I was like, I'm done. I'm done. That's it. And then of course, like another grant came out. I'm like, well, maybe I'll give it a try again. But it's about believing and knowing what you're capable of. And I think another thing is just that, even though people may not be there to support you, to be there for you, but there is someone out there. Like the people you interact with, you'll find that there's someone who believes enough in you. And sometimes all you need is one person,
Yes.
right? Because there are times when you could be surrounded by people and you feel so alone. I don't know if you ever, that feeling. It's
Yeah.
like you're
Mhm.
just like I don't know, you could be at work and there's all these people around you,
Yeah.
but you kind of feel just alone,
Yes.
Yeah.
but I think it's just being able to think to yourself, pause, and just be with yourself and say, you know, who can I speak to? Who is that one person that I know that will support me, will listen, and will tell me the truth?
Yes.
Like sometimes I speak to my sister because I know she's not going to, she's not
Yes.
going to beat around the bush. If I have a question, she'll tell me as it is,
Yes.
full of sarcasm, but it's with love
Yes.
sarcasm. So it's like if I had a really big question that I'm dealing with, I'd, text or call Dr. Wilson. I'm just like, I've got this situation. What do I do?
Mhm.
And the people who believe and support you do not always have to be in your field,
Yeah.
but I would say, pause, know what you want to do as well. Because sometimes
Mm,
it's hard for people to help you if you don't know what you want to do, but
true.
when you know what you want to do, it's a lot easier to get the help that you need to reach where you're trying to go.
Yeah.
And, other things are that in life, we're different, right? We are different, but we're the same as human beings. And the key is just in our differences, maintain respect. And
Yes.
I said it earlier, you may not agree with someone, you may not agree with what your patients are doing or what they're saying, but you have to just, a specific example to that. And I know, like you mentioned, we're running out of time here, but sometimes we take care of people who are incarcerated,
Mhm.
Mm,
right? We don't need to know the details of their incarceration, but
Yes.
we provide them the care that they need
Yeah.
and we just move on, right? And so sometimes that's just how life is. But I will still go back and harp. I mean, there's so many other things, but I think the most important thing is, and it is not easy, but it's really just believe in you, believe in who you are. And I think something I've also found helpful. I do listen to podcasts, so there's like someone named Kenny Dole I listen to a lot, who's very honest in a podcast, and also coaching. If you can get professional coaching, but you'd want to get that coaching by someone who understands your field. There are times where you can be surrounded by people and you don't have to say too much because you understand each other.
Correct.
Right.
And there are times where you're surrounded by people. It's going to take a lot of explanation. You're just like, you know what, forget about this. I'm just, it's like, I'm done. Yes, you're drained. There's so many things, but I would say, number one, just believe in yourself. Do not self-reject. Find someone who truly believes in you. And it's so possible for you to move up without putting someone else down. And when you move up and get up, don't forget about the people who helped you get to where you are. And don't forget about others in general. And I think that's the challenge with our world. With our world, we have problems because we don't communicate. We have problems because we email so much. We don't want to connect with people. We don't want to speak, because sometimes I say, like, when you get an email, I don't see the sender's expression. And I'm just like, oh my God, they're so mad at me. And then I'm going to reply angry. And you're just like, they weren't even angry when they sent it to you. And now you're replying angry. But that's because we don't communicate as much as well. So I think when there's opportunity to communicate and connect, you have to communicate and connect as humans. That's how you're going to know each other. When there's opportunity for you to travel the world, travel the world. Our patients come from such diverse places that once you travel, you'll be like, oh, I understand them. And then the last point, I do enjoy speaking to patients because they all have a story. They all have a story. It's like, I had an 80-something-year-old who was just so like in a good mood and everything. I'm like, what is it? And he was just like, it's faith, it's God. It's knowing that I've got fellowship at my church. I have people who bring me food. No matter what the diagnosis is, I'm in good hands. And sometimes when you're talking to patients and like we give informed consent, and part of the consent, I always tell them, because one of the consents, the risk, we say death. Like, there's a risk of death. And I have some patients who laugh, and like sometimes I'll laugh with them, but I'm like, why are we laughing? And then they'll just be like, it's in God's hand. It's in God's hand, and you take it. I'm just like, sometimes a patient wants to pray with you. It doesn't matter what I believe.
Correct.
All they want to do is they want to pray. And sometimes they want to hold your hand and pray. Just hold your hand and pray. Like your mind could be elsewhere, I guess, if you want to, but your body is there and you're praying with the patient. And you've done so much for that patient just by holding their hand. But I think there's joy in that. Like in patient care, there's joy in like learning other people's stories. It's like you're getting free advice from patients. It's like, so how have you been married for 50 something years? And then you're like, oh, so that's what needs to happen. Got it. Check. There's so much, but those are some of the tidbits, but it all goes down to like, you've got to believe in yourself. It's so, so hard. Oh, I know it is. Believe in yourself and find your tribe of cheerleaders. It could be one or two people. And sometimes that's all you need. You don't need an entourage of like 150 people, but it's just those one or two people. Another way to think about it is if I'm on my deathbed, who would I want to call? Right. Those are your people.
Wonderful. Well said. Well said. Oh my God. It's just, I wish we had more time. I wish we could just go on and on. Pearl, before I go to closing, anything more you want to say? Because I know we haven't even touched about the AF and something, your other organization that you started. I think this is for the other chapter, right?
Maybe she can touch this in the last question. When you look back on your career and your life, what legacy do you hope to leave behind?
Oh, perfect.
That's a really, really good one. And I think this might sound cliche, but it's just sort of knowing you tried all you could to leave this world a better place than you found it. Knowing that, when you're trying to help, when you're trying to do things, sometimes it's hard and you want to give up. There are times when I think of the world's problems, or I should say like the problems of the African continent, which goes to that organization, the African Association of Future Gastroenterologists. When I think of all the problems we have, and I think of all of them at once, of course, I'm like, oh my God, this is too much. but it's just knowing like I can only do a little bit at a time, but then I can also get others to do a little bit at a time with me. And together, those little bits add up to something. So with the African Association of Future Gastroenterologists, it's trying to build a foundation for GI in Africa, right? Because there's some patients who, they may get a procedure here, but that's not like I love procedures, but getting a procedure is not comprehensive care. Sometimes people just need you to talk to them, figure out why they needed that procedure, and after the procedure, what happens. So with the AFG, one of the things is how do we build that foundation where we're nurturing our young ones, where we're nurturing those early career doctors, where we're providing them the tools so that we build a stronger GI. So I think that the main thing is, what are the contributions, the paid forward contributions? What are the contributions to empower others? What are the contributions to make someone know that there's something in them? With opportunity, they will thrive. What is it that I've done to just a drop of like, you know what, you got this. There's something about you. You may not see it, but it is there, And I think if we can all sort of communicate along those lines, it's not a competition with whoever it is. Like I'm not competing with anyone. It's just me, And I think it's just being able to move forward along those paths of saying, you know what contributions am I making that would uplift someone, that would help our patients, that would make our community better? What am I doing? And I think that's the best way, at least for me, that's the joy that I get. It's like I've made a positive impact in this life, and now they're able to sort of move forward, but also bring someone up with them, and eventually we'll have a strong GI, not even a strong, but a stronger GI force within the African continent.
Wonderful. You lift as you rise.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, I don't even know whether we should stop now, but unfortunately, wow, you really threw so many, many nuggets for us, for the audience. And your true passion, you are grounded in it. The power, the heart of service, just reflects in everything that you said, you mentioned. But unfortunately, we only have few hours.
Okay.
So, but I hope you can join us another time again, because
Absolutely.
please continue this, because you are critical to the young ones, especially the one that's starting in the same discipline that you are in. They need you.
Yeah.
And you are going to make a lasting impact in their lives.
Thank
So
you.
as we draw this conversation to a close, I am reminded that the true heart of medicine beats strongest in people like you that choose to serve selflessly. And Dr. Akwi Asombang, truly you exemplify that in every word that you said. The act of the care that you provide, the act of intervention that you provide, and every moment of compassion that actually was reflected in how you said the things and how you meant it with your body. It was really being projected to us. You show the power of transformation in the lives that you touch, not just physically, but I see that you do that emotionally to them. You have brought healing to them. So you not just merely master the techniques or the procedures that you do, but you're truly bringing or living or creating a legacy in the people, because you give them hope, you give them trust, and I see that you give them unwavering dedication, and that actually makes them even feel better and believe in the medicine and the work that you do. You go extra mile. That's what I see in actually even traveling the globe, starting all these organizations that can empower the young ones, the future of medicine. That is dedication. That is passion. That is what we need in everybody who is entering the field of medicine, that can partner, that can help others and broaden the reach for compassion and for care. So thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for sharing your journey for us today and to our audience, to the younger ones who want to enter the field that you so passionately love. Thank you for keeping shining on what you do, on shining the light on what you do. And may your service to inspire, to guide, to teach continue. Until next time, you have inspired me, you've inspired others, but truly, truly, I'm so thankful that you have you on our podcast, because you've enlightened us. And I want the children, I'm going to, actually, as I said, I'm going to send this to my child son so that he can send it to his other friends as well. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for this platform. I really enjoyed the conversation with both of you. Thank you so much. I enjoyed the laughs as well.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you very
really
much.
appreciate you. Thank you so much again for joining us today, coming out of your busy schedule and taking the time. We really appreciate it. And to everyone who's listening to us today, thank you for joining us as well. And as we come to the end of this inspiring conversation, I want us all to reflect on the profound truth that the essence of medicine lies in service, that serving others with our skill, with our compassion, and with our heart is what it's all about. We just talked about an inspirational journey, and something for us to take home today is that their work highlights that true healing actually extends beyond the physical, as we have heard today. It touches the soul of the patient, offering reassurance and dignity in those most vulnerable moments. So I encourage everyone today, whether you're a healthcare professional, trainees, patients alike, to remember that every act of service, no matter how small it seems, contributes to a greater purpose. It's about showing up with kindness, with humility, and with a deep sense of responsibility. As we have heard today, it's about paying forward. It's about lifting others as we rise. So we hope to see you in the next episode. Thank you for joining us on this journey to elevate and inspire. Until next time, lead with purpose and grow with passion.